Welcome back, all you bulls and bears and betas out there, to the buzz of this Proxyopoly spin-off series we call the Proxyopoly Podcast. I'm your host, the Proxyopolist, formerly known as the Jackal of Trades, aka Jesse Colbertic, here again at your service with another exclusive proprietary Proxyopoly TM research report for Tesla. That's right, Proxyopolists. Following the Proxyopoly score for Deutsche Bank and BlackRock, we now have on the docket today an exclusive proprietary Proxyopoly TM research report for Tesla. Strictly confidential for educational and entertainment purposes only. Tesla Incorporated, ticker TSLA. The proxy-propelled cult of personality when governance circles the launchpad. Published by Proxyopoly TM of the whole and its alternative forms. Dated Proxy Season 2025. In our executive summary for this company, Tesla Inc., listed on the NASDAQ as TSLA, the pioneering electric vehicle manufacturer and occasional flamethrower merchant, is no stranger to controversy. While its technological advancements have propelled the company to astronomical valuations, its corporate governance structure seems to be modeled more after a techno-feudal dystopia than a modern shareholder-responsive public company. Tesla Inc. is undoubtedly one of the most iconic companies of the 21st century. But it is also one of the most uniquely governed. This report, by Proxyopoly TM, analyzes Tesla's corporate governance failures with particular focus on its egregious executive compensation packages, including Elon Musk's record-breaking, shareholder-draining, and proxy-shredding $56 billion pay package, which makes a hostile takeover of Mars look like a weekend side hustle. What distinguishes Tesla from nearly every other public company is not just its product innovation or volatility on the stock market. It is the founder-centric governance model that has fused Elon Musk's personal identity with Tesla's corporate destiny. This research report evaluates Tesla through the Proxyopoly score, a comprehensive framework that examines entrenchment, resistance, hostility, regulatory influence, among other governance factors across 5 core dimensions, otherwise known as Proxyopoly TM ratings. These Proxyopoly ratings are listed as follows. Number 1, Proxy Accumulation Resistance, acronym PAR. Proxyopoly rating number 2, Bylaw Fortification Index, acronym BFI. Proxyopoly rating number 3, Shareholder Hostility Quotient, acronym SHQ. Proxyopoly rating number 4, Executive Entrenchment Factor, acronym EEF. Proxyopoly rating number 5, Regulatory Evasion Measure, acronym REM. At the end of the podcast, we will announce the final Proxyopoly score for Tesla, but first we will dive into each of the Proxyopoly ratings for Tesla one by one. Overall, however, Tesla can be categorized as an unstable governance environment dominated by a concentrated control, public shareholder passivity, and unpredictable regulatory friction. First Proxyopoly rating we will start off with for the underlying Proxyopoly TM ratings, underlying the overlaying final Proxyopoly TM score. First on the list is, of course, the proxy accumulation resistance. for which Tesla receives a Proxyopoly rating of positive 0.10. In summary, shareholders cannot buy what Musk will not sell. Tesla's share structure is not formally dual class in theory. It is possible to mount a proxy challenge. But in practice, Musk's ownership of approximately 13% of the company's outstanding public shares and the alignment of institutional holders with Tesla's brand being partially Musk's personality make coordinated dissent rare and ineffective. Tesla's proxy accumulation resistance is near absolute. While technically a public company, Tesla operates more like a fiefdom controlled by Elon Musk and his merry band of technocratic loyalists. Insider ownership at Tesla must combine equity and influence, amplified by his devoted retail investor base, ensures that any activist accumulating proxies faces an impossible uphill battle. The army of Tesla retail shareholders functions as a digital defense shield, ensuring that any proxy challenge is met with social media outrage and a wave of meme-driven stock purchases. And what is the outcome of this? Accumulating proxies to challenge Musk's control is a mathematical impossibility. Tesla's proxy accumulation resistance of positive 0.1 reflects an interpretation that can be described as vulnerable in theory, but only with billionaire-scale resources and cultural momentum. Proxyopoly rating number 2, we look at the Bylaw Fortification Index, for which Tesla scores a Proxyopoly rating of positive 0.20. Bylaws? More like bylaws! The Bylaw Fortification Index reflects a modest Proxyopoly rating of positive 0.2, provided that Tesla's bylaws are structurally less obstructive than tech peer giants, sure, but the board and nominating procedures have been engineered to reflect Musk's vision, not independent accountability. Supermajority thresholds and founder loyalty candidates dominate on the board. Tesla is not overly impenetrable in a bylaw standpoint, but subtly calibrated to enshrine internal influence. Tesla's bylaws are fortified to perfection, designed to withstand proxy storms and resist activist influence with surgical precision. Staggered board terms on Tesla's board ensures that any meaningful change to governance is a multi-year odyssey of shareholder fatigue. Protraction comes to mind. The supermajority requirements of Tesla's board require shareholder proposals to be met with supermajority thresholds that ensure Musk's iron grip to remain firmly in place. And a poison pill strategy, and a poison pill light, if you will. While not explicitly adopting a poison pill, Tesla's governance structure poisons any chance of outsider influence. The outcome of this Proxyopoly rating reflects that the bylaws are fortified like Fort Knox, but with fewer ethical considerations. Proxyopoly rating number 3. The Shareholder Hostility Quotient, for which Tesla receives a Proxyopoly rating of positive 1.35. A proxy war with no ammunition. Tesla often claims to embrace its retail shareholders. Yet, shareholder proposals are routinely ignored and formal engagement mechanisms are either weak or performative only. Proxy votes on executive pay, ESG risks, or board independence regularly fail, despite broad retail interests from shareholders. The interpretation of Proxyopoly reflects for Tesla optics of democracy, but practices of royal decree. Tesla's SHQ rating of 1.35 highlights a state where shareholder hostility is not just tolerated, it is ignored with Elon-esque indifference. Symbolic proposals on the ballot of shareholder meetings, often centered around governance reforms and climate disclosures, are met with performative nods and zero implementation. Each annual general meeting of Tesla can be described as a proxy ritual on a yearly basis. Each proxy season, shareholder activists engage in a ritualistic dance of futility, proposing sensible reforms that are then voted down by Musk's digital army and passive institutional shareholders. And in this opinion, that retail army on the digital scale is amassed by Musk's conflict of interest by owning the social media platform X, in addition to his executive duties of Tesla. The outcome of this reflects shareholder hostility as high, but its impact is muted by a corporate culture that treats proxies as an afterthought. Proxyopoly rating number 4, executive entrenchment factor, for which Tesla receives a Proxyopoly rating of 1.85. Ooh, that is not a good look for you, Proxyopolis. Musk, CEO, king, or Martian regent. Musk's dual role as CEO and omnipresent public figure makes separation of personality from the company almost impossible. The board has never challenged Musk's authority, and governance norms like executive review or risk management independence have been historically absent or dissolved. An interpretation by Proxyopoly TM suggests that supreme executive permanence, sealed by charisma and shareholder mythos. If CEO entrenchment was an Olympic sport, Elon Musk would hold the gold medal in perpetuity. Executive remuneration with no limits. Musk's infamous $56 billion pay package was not just excessive. It was planetary in scale, redefining what executive compensation can achieve, while leaving shareholders gasping for air and capital. Not to mention the board loyalty pledge at Tesla. Tesla's board is less of a governing body and more of a fan club for Musk's ever-expanding ambitions. Proxy advisory firms might wave red flags, but they're often lost in a sea of Tesla fanboy noise. With no succession plan at Tesla, Musk's position is so entrenched that succession planning is just a theoretical exercise, with no viable candidate even considered on the ballot. Outcome suggested by Proxyopoly? Musk's autocratic reign makes the concept of CEO succession a laughable exercise as a self-landing colony on Mars. This now brings us to Proxyopoly rating number 5. The Regulatory Evasion Measure, or REM, for which Tesla receives a Proxyopoly rating of negative 0.20. Summarized as a regulatory game of chicken, unlike intentionally shaped regulatory frameworks, Tesla exists in a state of persistent regulatory friction. Fined by the SEC, investigated by the NHTSA, yet continuously eluding definitive structural reform. Tesla doesn't evade regulation with sophistication, it simply operates in the turbulence. Interpretation by Proxyopoly TM? Tesla is not above the law, but is rarely held to a steady accountability of it. Tesla's regulatory record is a masterclass in evasion, delay, and narrative control. The SEC settlements, for example, Musk treats SEC settlements like a rounding error in his quarterly filings. His ability to skirt regulatory consequences has set a dangerous precedent for executive accountability. FSD and autopilot scrutiny, for example, and Tesla's full self-driving and autopilot technologies being under intense regulatory scrutiny. However, regulatory agencies seem to be playing a game of regulatory chicken again, hesitant to impose meaningful consequences or reform to practices which may endanger public safety. Outcome? Regulatory evasion at Tesla is high, but unsustainable as scrutiny continues to build. We will take a pause for a moment as we've now concluded part 1 of the Proxyopoly research report for Tesla. Before we begin part 2, in the governance model and structural case studies and systemic implications section of our reporting, I'd like to take this opportunity to shout out our sponsors over at linktr.ee/nascarcosa, where you can get all your Proxyopoly needs. That's right, Proxyopolis. linktr.ee/nascarcosa. Check it out today. Part 2. Tesla's governance model, structural case studies, and systemic implications. Section 1. Musk's mandate: how founder dominance reinvents and erodes corporate governance. Tesla's governance model has an overview of asymmetry. Tesla presents a case study in founder-centric corporate structure where formal rules, shareholder frameworks, and board functions orbit a single executive. Elon Musk's role at Tesla is not merely that of a CEO. He is Tesla's brand in his mind, its R&D pipeline in his mind, its capital magnet in his mind, and its governance gravity well. In reality, board composition and independence, reflective of Tesla's governance model, shows a pattern of board loyalty. Tesla's board has been populated over the years by longtime associates, allies, and family members. Nepotism, including Musk's brother, Kimball Musk, and early investors with long-standing personal ties. Not to mention the ambiguity of the chair role following a 2018 SEC settlement requiring Musk to step down as chair. Tesla then appointed quote-unquote independent chair Robin Denholm. However, the chair has limited public visibility, and no meaningful challenges to Musk's authority have followed. Stagnant refreshment of the board shows us that the board's composition has little rotation, and independent certifications remain superficial. Most directors have financial or reputational proximity to Musk or SpaceX or X. In the retail shareholder mythos of Tesla's governance model, we see that Tesla's governance model has absorbed a large, vocal, and emotionally invested retail investor base, many of whom identify themselves as Teslanaires, thus creating a unique feedback loop. Musk communicates directly with his base through social media, bypassing investor relations and typical governance channels. Shareholders feel ownership affinity, but often vote reflexively in favor of Musk's positions regardless of governance implications. Shareholder proposals are often defeated by overwhelming majorities even when they reflect concerns shared by traditional institutional investors. Governance bypasses in action reflective of Tesla's governance model show us many different instances of events with governance implications. In 2018, the SEC settlement, for example, Musk tweeted funding secured regarding taking Tesla private. The SEC filed fraud complaints against Musk. Musk settles, pays fine, steps down as chair, but remains as CEO to keep influence on the board. In 2020, shareholders approved Musk's record-breaking pay package, worth up to $56 billion if market cap milestones were hit. However, the board presented the pay package without shareholder-aligned performance metrics. In the 2023 proxy season, multiple proposals to separate chair and CEO were raised, along with proposals to strengthen ESG oversight and propose the disclosure of racial equity audits, all of which were defeated, despite growing institutional concern, thus becoming evident that retail inertia sustains the status quo. Shareholder proposals at Tesla are ignored, outvoted, or merely symbolic in nature. Tesla's annual shareholder meetings reveal an institutional paradox, with high engagement volume and low governance impact. Yearly notable proposals and their support level outcome make clear. The independent chair received only 20% of the vote, thus defeated. In 2022, racial equity audit, receiving only 30% support, was also defeated. In 2023, say-on pay adjustments raised by shareholders only received 14% of the vote, defeated again. And in 2023, enhanced ESG reporting, these proposals also only received 25% of support on the ballot, thus resulting in their defeat at the shareholder meeting. Interpretation of this by Proxyopoly is as follows. Shareholder mechanisms exist, but cultural reverence neutralizes their use. Moving on to the section of this, noting Tesla as a systemic outlier with proxy volatility and capital risk. The first capital risk we will note is founder flight risk. The company's valuation is tightly correlated with Musk's public presence and perceived availability. Any signal that Musk could leave, as he has floated repeatedly, creates multi-billion-dollar market swings, destabilizing shareholder value. Another capital risk, ESG and risk oversight deficits. Tesla has long rejected traditional ESG disclosure frameworks. Its response to ESG-focused investors is often dismissive or adversarial. Tesla refused to participate in Sustainability Accounting Standards Board's SASB disclosure protocols, and was also removed from the S&P 500 ESG Index in 2022, citing governance deficiencies. Tesla resists disclosure of workforce diversity data and supply chain emissions transparency. Which begs the question, what does an electric car company have to hide in regard to its emissions transparency? This Proxyopoly asks. Moving on to the fourth section of this part 2, the Proxyopoly analysis. When the Proxyopoly score is revealed at the end of this podcast, it will reflect a company with incomplete fortifications, hostile to performative shareholder engagement, and an entrenched executive whose dominance surpasses formal limits. Unlike Proxyopolis mentioned on the previous podcasts, such as BlackRock, with their quiet bureaucratic control, Tesla's corporate governance dominance is charismatic, volatile, and investor-driven. Musk has won his seat on the board and his place as chief executive officer, not by rigging the rules, but by redefining the corporate culture around them. We now have arrived at part 3 of this proprietary Proxyopoly TM research report. Before we dive into part 3, once again, give a moment for the Proxyopolist at home to take a bathroom break, get some snacks. And this would be the part where the Proxyopoly podcast, could suggest which snacks to snack upon. But we don't do sponsored content here. We grind for nothing at the Proxyopoly. Why? Because Proxyopoly is selfless. And Proxyopoly wants to help as many stakeholders as humanly possible. That being said, we've now arrived at part 3 of the proprietary Proxyopoly research report. The recommendations, reform scenarios, and proxy rebalancing options. Oh, very interesting, Proxyopolis. Let's dive in, shall we? Restoring balance without re-entry. Can governance survive the gravity of charisma? Structural recommendations for governance reform at Tesla are as follows. While Tesla is an unconventional case, the same vulnerabilities apply for other Proxyopolies as well. Shareholder power is weakened. Executive dominance is unchecked. And proxy voting is either symbolic or misaligned. The following recommendations are designed to realign Tesla's governance orbit, not to limit innovation, but to ensure it is accountable, sustainable, and participatory. Recommendation number 1. Mandate chair-CEO separation with real enforcement. Elon Musk holds disproportionate influence over both strategic and oversight decisions, violating widely endorsed governance standards. Actionable recommendations. Amend Tesla's corporate charter to require independent chair rotation every 5 years. Recommendation number 2. Empower the lead independent director to publish annual governance assessments that include dissenting views and risk reviews. Moving on to the second topic for recommendations and reform scenarios for proxy rebalancing options. Rebuild board independence with external oversight. The issue? The board of Tesla is perceived as loyal to the founder, not accountable to shareholders. Actionable recommendations. Establish a board-level governance and risk review committee led by independent directors with no prior ties to Musk or Tesla affiliates. Also, another recommendation, appoint at least 2 directors with institutional investor endorsement through a proxy nomination window. Called a proxy challenge, a proxy contest. Can Tesla sustain it? Can they handle it? Well, that's up to you, Proxyopolis. I'm just the Proxyopolis, formerly known as the Jackal of Trades, here to eradicate every instance of nepotism on boards across the spectrum of publicly traded companies listed on any global stock exchange. Moving on to recommendation number 3 for reform scenarios and proxy rebalancing options. Reconfigure executive compensation to reflect risk, not just growth. Issue: Musk's current compensation structure rewards extreme valuation targets while ignoring operational volatility, regulatory risk, and employee impact. Once again, those employees are stakeholders of the organization, even if they are not themselves shareholders. I mean, if I was an employee, why the hell would I want to own shares in Tesla? Because, my goodness, the lines that swing that stock would make it extremely difficult to go into work every day. One day, my account would be worth X amount of dollars, another day it'd be worth X minus B. Who would? Asked this Proxyopolis. Moving on. Actionable recommendations for such an executive compensation package. Replace discretionary stock awards with multivariable performance frameworks, tying compensation to ESG metrics, governance reform milestones, and shareholder engagement scores. Ooh. Stay tuned. One could also, in these recommendations, introduce clawback provisions for unmet milestones or regulatory sanctions. Recommendation number 4 for reform scenarios and proxy rebalancing options. Democratize proxy access for retail and institutional investors. The issue? While Tesla has one of the largest retail investor bases, retail votes rarely shift outcomes due to the lack of access to advisory tools or resolution sponsorship. Actionable recommendations by Proxyopoly for this democratizing of proxy access. Partner with custodians and fintechs to implement proxy advisory dashboards that educate retail investors about resolution implications. Recommendation number 2, lower the ownership threshold to submit shareholder resolutions to 0.25% of shares held for 1 year from the current SEC standard of 1% over 3 years. That is again a recommendation to regulators. However, on the subject of educating retail investors about resolution implications, working with custodians and fintechs, Proxyopoly TM is once again here to service all your needs in this regard. Stay tuned, Proxyopolis. Recommendation number 5 for reform structures and proxy rebalancing options. Establish transparent succession planning. Issue: Musk has floated the idea of leaving Tesla or passing the torch to other executives without disclosing formal succession strategies. This creates systemic valuation and control risk. Actionable recommendations: require annual succession planning disclosures as part of the company's 10K filing with the SEC. Recommendation number 2, introduce a crisis continuity oversight plan to clarify who assumes key governance roles if Musk departs, is incapacitated, or deemed unfit by the board. Moving on to the cultural and institutional realignment section of the recommendations for reform scenarios and proxy rebalancing options. Shift from founder identity to institutional identity. Tesla's greatest governance challenge is not legal, it is cultural. The company has cultivated a founder-fused identity where criticism of leadership is interpreted as a threat to innovation. That makes reform existentially charged rather than structurally neutral just because the CEO throws a pity party for himself when he takes things personally. Recommendations by Proxyopoly TM launch a governance-forward shareholder education campaign led by Tesla's investor relations team, supported by third-party governance experts. Could be Proxyopoly or any other proxy advisor. Stay tuned, Proxyopolis. Recommendation number 2. Empower employees, customers, and minority shareholders to participate in annual governance listening sessions prior to proxy season. Another recommendation under the category of cultural and institutional realignment: strengthen regulatory transparency. The issue is that Tesla has become the subject of repeated investigations via the SEC, NHTSA, OSHA, and EEOC, but provides minimal transparency around outcomes or corrective actions. Recommendations under this category by Proxyopoly TM for Tesla include publishing a regulatory response disclosure report annually, summarizing all regulatory actions, fines, settlements, and reforms undertaken. Recommendation number 2 under this category: adopt a corporate accountability scorecard updated quarterly, including metrics on workplace safety, legal risk, and whistleblower outcomes. Doot, doot. All right, moving on to the executive compensation package, which we mentioned before, the $56 billion elephant in the room. Performance-based or pure proxy hegemony. Once again, referring back to Elon Musk's $56 billion compensation package as the largest in corporate history, structured as a series of performance-based tranches that effectively transferred wealth from shareholders to Musk's already overflowing coffers of cash. Key issues with Musk's compensation package: lack of real accountability. The package was performance-based in name only, with benchmarks that were met largely through market hype and narrative control, rather than sustained operational performance. Another issue with Musk's compensation package: board conflicts of interest. The Tesla board, tasked with protecting shareholder interests, rubber-stamped the package with minimal resistance, ensuring that Musk's influence remained unchecked. Another issue with Musk's compensation package is the shareholder dilution. The dilution from Musk's option conversions continues to erode shareholder value, with retail investors bearing the brunt of this executive largesse. The impact of these considerations on the Proxyopoly score reflect a compensation package alone that catapults Tesla into a proxy kingdom where executive overreach amplifies shareholder volatility. Moving on to the third section of the third part of this report, being the recommendations, reform scenarios, and proxy rebalancing options. We now have a summary of the final Proxyopoly score based on the underlying Proxyopoly ratings. And the Proxyopoly TM risk rebalancing framework is as follows. If Tesla wishes to lead the future of energy and mobility as an electric car company, it must also lead in accountable governance. To that end, we at Proxyopoly of the Whole and its alternative forms propose a risk rebalancing model based on the following Proxyopoly score thresholds. And these are thresholds which clarify or distinguish descriptions according to the Proxyopoly score assigned. These are once again normally ranging from 0 to 1. However, they can fall beyond the bandwidth of 0 and 1, provided that there are egregious governance controversies in one direction or another. Thus, a Proxyopoly score can be above 1 or even negative, depending on its correlation factor to other Proxyopolies. And you can view the breakdown of this Proxyopoly score and the underlying bandwidths and descriptions exclusively on the Patreon, where you can view the entire report for your reading pleasure. If you don't want to read it, you can still keep listening to it. But I don't know how you can copy and paste my voice and still make it sound like your own and take credit for my work, Proxyopolis. Do you get it now? You kind of see where this is going? It's intellectual property protected under the trademark of Proxyopoly. Moving on to the final reflection and getting to the revealing of the final Proxyopoly score for Tesla, we leave you with some final thoughts from Proxyopoly. Tesla's mission is ambitious, and its CEO is undeniably visionary. But innovation does not excuse entrenchment. A company capable of revolutionizing transportation and energy needs should not lag behind in democratic ownership, board influence, or risk disclosure. Rebalancing governance isn't a restraint. It is a flight check. And for a company committed to launching humanity to Mars, the responsible move is to first secure the cockpit. Now, before we launch the Proxyopoly score for takeoff, once again, you can read this entire report on the Patreon, which can be found on the linktree at linktree/nascarcosa. Summarizing the Proxyopoly ratings underlying the overlaying Proxyopoly score, we will once again go over the Proxyopoly ratings, and there are 5 of them. Proxyopoly rating number 1, proxy accumulation resistance. Proxyopoly has assigned a Proxyopoly rating of positive 0.10 for the proxy accumulation resistance of Tesla. Moving on to Proxyopoly rating number 2, the Bylaw Fortification Index. Proxyopoly has assigned a Proxyopoly rating of positive 0.20 for Tesla. Moving on to Proxyopoly rating number 3, the Shareholder Hostility Quotient. Proxyopoly has assigned a Proxyopoly rating of positive 1.35 for Tesla. Proxyopoly. Moving on to Proxyopoly rating number 4, the Executive Entrenchment Factor. Proxyopoly has assigned a Proxyopoly rating of 1.85. Moving on to the 5th Proxyopoly rating underlying the Proxyopoly score. Proxyopoly has assigned a Proxyopoly rating for the regulatory evasion measure. Proxyopoly rating number 5. of negative 0.20. Which brings us, after proprietary calculations, beep boop bop, beep boop beep bop. There we go. The final Proxyopoly score for Tesla is 1.18 positively, which you really could do better. That's it, Proxyopolis. The final Proxyopoly score for Tesla is 1.18 positive. Thanks for tuning in, Proxyopolis. As a final disclaimer, the Proxyopoly TM score and accompanying analysis are purely hypothetical for entertainment and educational purposes only. Any resemblance to real-world events is purely coincidental, though with Tesla's governance trajectory, reality may be catching up faster than we expect. So hammer down on that electric pedal in the electric city, folks. This report has been published by Proxyopoly TM of the whole and its alternative forms for educational and entertainment purposes only. All intellectual property is protected under the trademark of Proxyopoly. Stay tuned for the next episode, Proxyopolis. What will the next Proxyopoly score be? The choice is yours. Check out the poll if you can find it. If it ain't Proxyopoly, you're Proxyopoly lying.